How's it going, guys? Thanks for joining me, and never stop the RC. In this video, I'm going to do a quick unboxing, overview, and setup for the new V-22 Osprey VTOL. This is a bind and fly version, also comes as a plug and play. And then afterwards, maybe we'll do a quick test hover in the backyard. But the Sunday group does have at least 5 of these coming. So we're going to have a squadron of them and plenty of flight video coming up for this model. First thing you notice when you unbox it, or at least take the box cover off, is you see this big sticker sheet right there. And all of these are pre-cut stickers, so it's very easy to apply them and set up the model in whatever scheme that you want. You have a bag with your landing gear and Velcro, another bag with a couple spare props for the main motors, and then you have your instruction manual. Everything out of the box, there's really not much to set up with the model. All you have to do is put on the landing gear, or you can leave it off if you just want to have it fly around with that gear up look. It can still VTOL on the fuselage. You have your Velcro to apply to the battery compartment, and then you have the stickers. So really not much setup for the model. Here's the aircraft all set up and ready to go, and I'll show you guys some different angles and some details on it, but really it's super quick to set up. The longest part is probably just setting up the radio and then binding the aircraft. As far as binding the model, when you plug in the battery, it does take about 10 seconds for the receiver to go into bind mode. It doesn't do it instantly like most of the receivers do. So give it about 10 seconds. You can't really see the receiver if the model is just sitting upright because it's in the fuselage. You can see it through the hatch on the underside of the fuselage, but you might not know it's going into bind mode. So give it 10 seconds and then bind the aircraft, and it should work just fine. The nose wheel is not steerable, but it's on a caster, so it rotates left and right very easily, so you can still taxi the airplane around. Going over the specs, this aircraft flies with a 3-cell 800 milliamp pack with a JST connector. They do recommend setting the flight timer at 4 minutes. Does not seem like a lot of flight time, but keep in mind, in hover mode, you have 3 motors going, forward flight 2 motors going. It's a fairly heavy aircraft for its size. There's a lot of stuff in it, so that does kind of limit the flight time somewhat. You have 2 12 amp ESCs running the 2250 kV motors on the wings, spinning 5x3 inch props. Tail motor is a 4000 kV with a 6 amp ESC, spinning a 2x1.8 inch 4-bladed prop. 2 5-gram submicro servos tilt your rotors on the wings, and you have 3 3.7 gram submicro servos for your ailerons and elevator. So I know what you guys are thinking. This looks like a convergence, and that's exactly what it is. This is a convergence dressed up as an Osprey, and I think they did do a pretty decent job with it. It looks scale. The biggest things on it that are not scale, of course, are that tail motor, so they can fly in the hover mode, and then the rotors on the Osprey, the full-scale version, are massive, whereas the rotors on this one, or the props, are pretty tiny. So those are the two things, but other than that, I think they did a pretty nice job as far as the scale looks for it. Just like the Convergence, this one has 3 different flight modes. It has the stabilized hover mode, so in that mode you're just basically VTOLing it, vertical takeoff and landing, flying around in the hover, stabilized, self-leveling, transition into your first flight mode, which is forward flight stabilized. It's like flying an aircraft with safe, so you're going to have limited bank angle, you're not going to be able to roll it, not going to be able to loop it, but it's going to self-level. So you can fly in hover mode and forward flight completely stabilized with self-leveling. Third flight mode is forward flight with self-leveling turned off. So now you have full acro control. You can do your rolls and your loops, and you can easily transition between all of those different modes. The radio setup for this is pretty straightforward. It's right in the instructions. It's basic stuff. You have dual rates. You can set up 10% expo on the 3-axis, and then you have your 3-position switch for your different flight modes. And the flight controller knows the modes. So all you have to do is assign the channel to that switch, and it's going to do the rest. Nothing special that you need to do. It'll know the different modes, and then you can toggle between them. The other thing I recommend is setting up a throttle cut for the model, and I think that's actually a great idea. And the reason is that when you're in that hover mode, if you don't have a throttle cut, you go to 0 throttle, your motors are going to stop. And an aircraft like this, with small props and a fair amount of weight, it's just going to drop like a brick out of the air, and you're going to then hit the throttle and maybe overcorrect. You could get into a bad situation. So what a throttle cut lets you do is you can set the throttle trim so that even at 0 throttle, you have some power in the motors. Maybe not enough to lift the aircraft off the ground, but at least some thrust so that when you come down and you go to 0 throttle, it's not going to just completely drop out of the air and potentially crash. So then you can land, motors are still spinning, then you hit the throttle cut, turn it off, take out your battery. So I think the throttle cut's a great idea. Definitely recommend setting that up so that you're a little bit more stable, a little bit safer when you're in that hover mode. All right, guys, I want to take this thing outside and do a quick test flight in the backyard. I can't wait to fly it. And we'll be doing a lot more flying with these things in some upcoming videos. But let's just get this thing in the air and just see what it looks like. All right, so what I can tell you after that quick test hover is that in the hover mode, it flies much better in forward flight than reverse. In fact, reverse is very slow, very sluggish, and if there's a breeze, it's probably going to be even worse if it's trying to fight a breeze. So much better in forward flight. Just keep that in mind if you're getting near obstacles and things like that. You'll want to be nose away from those things so you can get out of that trouble. Anyway guys, thanks for watching. That's a quick look at the new V-22 Osprey VTOL. We'll have some more videos coming up shortly and definitely a lot more flying video. Thanks for watching. Any questions, post below, and I'll see you next time.